good. My first real job after months of searching, the first step toward independence. After spending countless nights wondering if I would ever find my place, I finally landed a position at a law firm in downtown Chicago. The firm had a reputation for handling high profile cases, and I was eager to prove myself. The building was old, over 100 years old to be exact, but it was well maintained. Its stern exterior commanding respect. From the outside, it looked like any other office building. Classy, professional, the kind of place where you could imagine working for decades. But I was about to learn looks can be deceiving. I was greeted by the office manager, a woman named Susan, who seemed nice but distant. She gave me a quick tour, explained the basic layout of the office, and handed me a stack of files. It was busy. The usual hustle and bustle of a law firm filled the space. People talking on phones, typing away, keyboards, printers whirring in the background. Everyone was too focused on their work to take notice of me, which I found comforting. But as the day wore on, something about the building unsettled me. It wasn't the noise, the people, or even the thick stack of papers that piled up on my desk. It was something else, a strange, heavy feeling in the air. Like the building itself was holding its breath. Around 3 p.m., I was asked to deliver some documents to a client on the top floor. I took the elevator to the 13th floor, which seemed strange considering the building had no 13th floor listed on the directory. But it didn't make much sense to me at the time. I pressed the button for the top floor, and the elevator groaned as it ascended. When the doors opened, I stepped into a dark corridor. The lights were dim, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. I could hear the faint sound of wind whistling outside. But inside the office space, it was silent. There were no signs of life, no footsteps, no voice, just the faint hum of the building's old ventilation system. I made my way down the hallway, trying to shake off the sense of unease that had settled over me. The walls were lined with old portraits, their frames cracked and peeling. The carpet beneath my feet felt worn, and every step seemed to echo in the empty space. At the end to the hall, there was a large wooden door that appeared to lead into the boardroom. I knocked gently, but there was no answer. I knocked again, this time a bit louder. Still no response. I considered turning back, but I had been asked to deliver these documents, and I couldn't afford to make a bad impression on my first day. I opened the door. Inside was a large, dimly lighted room with a long, polished wooden table at the center. The air inside felt cold, as if the room had been abandoned for years. The walls were adorned with more portraits, but they seemed different, darker, more foreboding. At the far end of the room, there was a massive fireplace. Its hearth cold and empty. A single chair sat facing the window, as though someone had just been there and left in a hurry.
I approached the table, placing the documents down. As I turned to leave, I heard something, a whisper. Stay. The voice was soft, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. I spun around, looking for the source of the voice, but the room was empty. My heart raced as I backed toward the door, trying to calm myself. It must have been the wind or my imagination, right? But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. The chair by the window had moved. It had been facing the wall when I first entered the room, but now it was turned toward me, as if someone had just sat in it. I quickly left the room, shutting the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I waited for the elevator. I pressed the button, but the elevator didn't move. The lights flickered overhead, and I felt a cold gust of air rush through the hall. It was as though something or someone was standing right behind me, watching. I could hear faint footsteps behind me. Slow and deliberate, I turned, but no one was there. My pulse quickened, and I rushed to the elevator, pressing the button repeatedly. Finally, the doors opened, and I stepped inside, breathing a sigh of relief. The elevator descended, but as it passed the 13th floor, I noticed something in the reflection of the mirror, a figure, barely visible, standing in the corner of the elevator. Its face was obscured by shadows, but I could feel its presence. It was watching me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. I was alone. The elevator doors opened, and I practically stumbled out, my legs weak beneath me. I didn't stop until I reached my desk on the first floor. And even then, the feeling of being watched lingered. The rest of the day was a blur. I tried to focus on my work, but the images of the empty room, the whisper, the figure in the elevator, they wouldn't leave me. I could feel the weight of the building pressing down on me, as if it had been waiting for me, for something. That night, as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, something that wasn't quite human. The city was quiet, but I felt as though I wasn't alone. I never returned to that office again. The next morning, I called in sick, telling my manager I couldn't come in. But the truth was, I was scared. I found out later that the 13th floor had been abandoned for years. No one went up there, not even the staff. The floor had once housed the firm's original offices, but after several strange occurrences, the building's management had sealed it off. I don't know what happened on that floor, or who or what was there. Asterisk, but I know one thing the start of a fresh chapter. I shouldn't have gone after up there. Months of searching. I had finally landed a job at a prestigious school in the heart of New York City. The position was as a history teacher, a subject I had spent years studying, and one I was passionate about. I had always dreamed of being a teacher, and this was the opportunity I had been waiting for. The school was beautiful, an old brick building with grand columns, ivy crawling up the walls, and large windows that let in the soft, golden light of the afternoon sun. When I walked through the halls on my first day, I was in awe. It felt like stepping into a different era. The old wood floors creaked underfoot, and the smell of the place, the mix of aged paper and chalk felt familiar, comforting. I was given the keys to my classroom, a small but cozy space with large windows that overlooked a courtyard. The desk was set at the front, and the chalkboard gleamed in the dim light. The classroom was warm, inviting, and I quickly set about arranging my materials, eager to meet the students. The first day went well, better than I had expected. The students were engaged, interested, and seemed to enjoy the lessons I had prepared. I could tell this was going to be a great year, but by the end of the day, as I walked through the empty hallways, I began to feel an unsettling sensation. It was as if the building itself was watching me. As the day turned into night, the quiet of the school became even more pronounced. The halls, once filled with the chatter of students, now echoed with silence. The janitors had long left for the day, and the only sound was the soft hum of the old heating system. I was the last teacher to leave, or so I thought. I gathered my things and walked down the hallway toward the exit. The school, despite its beauty, seemed different at night. The soft light from the windows seemed to flicker with every step I took. As I neared the door, I paused. Something felt off. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't explain it, but the air felt heavy, as if someone was still in the building with me. I walked quickly to the door, but before I could reach it, I heard something, a faint sound, like a whisper. Stay. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I turned round, expecting to see someone there, but the hallway was empty, just shadows and the flickering lights. I quickly shook it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. It had been a long day, after all. But then, as I reached for the door handle, I heard it again. This time, it was louder, clearer. Stay, please. The voice came from down the hall. It wasn't a whisper. It was more like a raspy, desperate plea. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned, looking down the dimly lit hallway. There, at the end of the corridor, was a door. The door to the old storage room. The door I had been told never to enter. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I knew I should leave. I should just walk out the door, get in my car, and never come back. But some strange pull compelled me to go down the hallway. I walked slowly, each step echoing louder than the last. The door at the end of the hall stood slightly ajar, as though it had been waiting for me. The whispering continued, louder now, almost frantic. Don't leave. You don't understand. I hesitated. Standing just before the door, my hand shook as I reached out to push it open. The door creaked on its hinges, and I stepped inside. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out the outlines of old shelves, boxes of forgotten supplies, and equipment covered in dust. The air was thick, suffocating. But what caught my attention was something else. A figure in the far corner of the room. It was a person tall, thin, draped in shadows. I couldn't make out their features, but I could feel them staring at me. Suddenly, the figure spoke. Why did you come? The voice wasn't human. It was distorted, like it was coming from deep within the walls, like it had been trapped for years. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. You shouldn't be here, the voice continued. You're not supposed to know. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. The room seemed to close in around me, the walls narrowing as the figure stepped closer. My heart raced, and I was paralyzed, unable to do anything but stare at the dark form. The voice spoke again, this time louder, filled with anger. Leave now. But it was too late. The shadows seemed to stretch, curling round me, tightening like a noose. I felt the weight of something pressing down on me, suffocating me. In that moment, I realized I had made a grave mistake. I shouldn't have come to this school. I shouldn't have entered this room. Something had happened here, something dark and tragic, and I was about to become a part of it. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed against the door, and it gave way. I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air. The door slammed shut behind me, and the whispering stopped. I didn't stop to look back. I ran as fast as I could, out of the building, and into the night. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The next morning, I called in sick, unable to shake the terror of what I had experienced. I couldn't go back. I couldn't face that school again. I tried to explain to my colleagues what happened, but they brushed it off, dismissing it as stress or exhaustion. I never returned to that school. I left the city, moved far away, and started over. But the memories, the voice, the figure, it still haunts me to this day. Every now and then, I hear the whisper in the back of my mind, urging me to return. But I never will. The end. Story 3 *********. It was supposed to be a fresh start. My first day on the job at St. Mark's Hospital, after years of struggling to land a proper position in the healthcare field. I had finally secured a job as a night shift nurse. The hospital was well known, established, and had a reputation for excellent care. I felt optimistic, ready to face the challenges and be part of a team making a difference. I arrived early, eager to get the lay of the land. The hospital stood on a quiet street in the middle of the city, its walls weathered from years of service, but still exuding an air of professionalism. The interior was classic, with the faint smell of antiseptic, polished floors, and long, sterile hallways. The staff was friendly, welcoming me with smiles and warm introductions. The first few hours passed without incident. I was given a tour of the hospital and shown around the floor where I would be working. The staff was efficient, and everything seemed to be running smoothly. It was a typical hospital setting: patients in beds, doctors in their rounds, nurses monitoring vitals. But even though everything seemed calm on the surface, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was off. By midnight, the floor was quieter, more subdued. The hospital, typically bustling during the day, was now a hushed labyrinth of flickering lights and empty corridors. Most of the patients were sleeping, and I was left to monitor the rooms and attend to any immediate needs. As I walked the halls, I felt a growing unease. There was an eeriness in the air that I couldn't explain. The silence was almost too loud. The usual hum of machines, the sound of footsteps, and the chatter of colleagues were replaced by an unsettling stillness. It felt like the building was holding its breath. I dismissed it as exhaustion or nerves. It was my first night after all. But when I entered room 306 to check on a patient, I noticed something strange. The lights flickered briefly, and the room grew cold. I checked the thermostat, nothing unusual. I was about to leave when I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. "Help me." I froze. The room was empty except for the elderly patient, who was asleep. I glanced around, but there was no one there. Maybe it was just the wind outside, or my imagination playing tricks on me. I shook my head and left the room, telling myself to stay focused. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder. They echoed through the hallways, soft but unmistakable, as if someone was calling out for help from just around the corner. I walked toward the source of the sound, but the hospital felt empty, devoid of any staff. It was like the place was a shell, waiting for something to happen. I reached the end of the corridor and turned the corner, my heart racing in my chest. The whispering stopped abruptly. In its place, I heard a faint scratching sound. It came from the walls. My mind went into overdrive. Was it rodents? An old building like this could have rats. I quickly checked my surroundings, but the hallway was still and silent. The scratching sound grew louder, more deliberate, as if something was moving behind the walls. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I hurried to the nurse's station, hoping someone else could explain what was happening. But the station was deserted. My hands trembled as I grabbed the phone and dialed the supervisor. No answer. I dialed again, but it went straight to voicemail. My heart raced as I walked back down the hallway, glancing over my shoulder as I went. That's when I saw it, a shadow at the far end of the corridor, a figure, tall and unmoving. The figure stood completely still, watching me. It was a silhouette, too dark, too still to be a person. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It felt like time had stopped. I stepped closer, my legs shaking, and the figure slowly began to fade into the shadows. I blinked and it was gone. I immediately ran to the closest door and locked it behind me. I was panicking now. My heart was pounding in my chest. What had I just seen? Was it a patient's hallucination? A trick of the light? No, it wasn't. It was real. After a few minutes, I calmed myself down. I forced myself to breathe. It had to be stress, but that didn't explain the coldness, the whispering, or the shadow I saw. I couldn't stay in that room. I had to check. The rest of the hospital, the rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and confusion. The whispers came and went, but the figure never appeared again. The rest of my shift was a nightmare. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting to make itself known. And the hospital, once a place of healing, now felt like a tomb. Finally, the shift ended, and I was relieved to leave. But as I walked out of the building, I heard the whispers one last time. "Don't go." I turned around, but there was no one there. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next day, I called in sick and told my supervisor I was feeling unwell. But I knew I couldn't return to St. Mark's Hospital. Something wasn't right there. I later found out that the hospital had a dark history, filled with strange occurrences and rumors of people vanishing without a trace. The old building had been built over an old cemetery, and some people believed that the souls of the lost still haunted the halls. I've never been back to St. Mark's, and I don't plan to. I've since learned that the first day on the job can bring more than just stress. It can open doors to a world you may not be prepared to face. But no matter how far I've gone, the whispers still follow me, especially when the wind howls late at night. The end.